Welcome to Squat Rex. Tonight we're going to talk about breathing and what it means to stay tight while squatting. A common squatting problem is staying tight throughout the entire range of motion. Sometimes this is a matter of inattentiveness, sometimes it can be poor breathing patterns, sometimes it's just a matter of setting the bar up at the right height to get started. First thing I'd like to draw your attention to is setting up the J-hooks at the proper height. If you set the J-hooks too high, and this is commonly seen at the gym, people are going to have to get up on their tiptoes in order to get the bar off of the racks. What usually happens is then the bar is not going to be properly placed on their back, and they're going to be unstable to begin with. So when you set up the bar for your squats, you want it set at about armpit height. This usually should set you in a good place for low bar squatting. For high bar squatting, you might be able to go a little bit higher. But generally speaking, it's going to be better for you to start a little bit on the low side rather than on the high side. When you're squatting, you want to make sure that your whole body is tight. What I mean by that is your whole body should be almost readying itself for a punch. If you're squatting with maximal weights, you have to be prepared. If you start out loosey-goosey, you're asking for injury. In most squatters who have this tendency to shake or be loosey-goosey as they're setting up for their squat, one thing that you can remind them of is to just stay tight, flex that stomach, prepare for a punch. This should cure most of those issues. If you can imagine that you are readying yourself for a blow to the gut, you're not just going to tense your stomach. You're going to tense your glutes, your hip flexors, your leg adductors. Everything in this whole region is going to be flexed and tight and ready for that blow. When you're squatting, it's really no different. You have to make sure that your upper back is as tight as possible. You have to make sure that your gut is ready to go, and your stance has to be rock solid. If any of those things is missing, and if you're trying to squat a very heavy weight, you're going to have a tough time. Typically, when beginners start out in the weight room, they'll tend to hold their breath while exerting themselves. In the 80s, when I was spending a lot of time reading bodybuilding magazines, they told you to exhale on the exertion and to inhale on the eccentric part of the lift. This is a decent rule of thumb. However, if you watch any martial artist, they're going to be stopping their breath right before any kind of action. This was one of the things that I learned from a kendo master who I had the good luck of talking to quite at length. He said that if you looked at an expert kendo player, one of the things that you'll notice about them is that they're watching their opponent's breath the entire match. The object is to attack the opponent when they are least ready for an attack, and usually that is when they are inhaling. It is when you are exhaling or when you're holding your breath that you're going to be ready for action, when you are going to be actually executing some kind of action. It's the same thing when squatting. As you set up out of the rack, you're going to be holding your breath until you get into position. Then you're going to take in a deep breath, and on the eccentric, you'll be holding that breath. As you rise out of the hold, you will be expelling some breath as you come out. In the martial arts, there's what's called kiai. Kiai means something like merging of energy. It's that yell that you hear karate practitioners do or kung fu artists do when they punch or kick. It's a way of controlling your breath. It's a way of focusing your energies. As you rise from the hold, the exhaling that you do, whether it's a grunt or a hiss or a kiai, should correspond with that exertion. and it should actually help you focus your energies into finishing that squat. High reps are a little bit different. If you are using a light load, your breathing patterns might differ a little bit. But generally speaking, on every exertion, you're either going to be holding your breath or you're going to be expelling it under control. I'm going to take you through a few squat reps so that you can see how I synchronize my breath with squatting. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set myself up under the bar as tight as possible. I'm going to get my shoulders under. I'm going to make sure that I'm centered under the bar. Make sure that my upper back is tight as possible. Make sure my feet are in the position I want them to be in. Take a deep breath and go. From this position, I'm going to remain tight, and I'm going to take a couple steps back. Get my feet into position. And again, I'm going to refocus on getting as tight as possible. I'm going to inhale. Make sure that my abs, upper back, hips, legs, all the way down to my toes, everything is tight and where I want it to be. Inhale. Now the hissing at the end was a little overdone, just so that you could tell where that breath was coming. Next set's a little heavier, but the technique should be exactly the same. And when you're warming up, you want to make sure that every repetition is exactly the same. If you're working on technique, you probably want to keep the sets high and the reps low. Doing high rep sets is probably not the best way to improve your form. I've had some injuries, so this will be about as heavy as I probably go. Hopefully you'll be able to tell the breathing and the setup and staying tight throughout this set. Well, there you have it. Through the magic of technology, you missed my miss with 405, and you got to see me make it. I'm pretty happy with that set, considering where I'm at with my training. Be aware of your breathing. Breathing is an underestimated component of lifting and lifting heavy. Talk with a doctor. Find out what breathing pattern is going to be acceptable for you.